Welcome back to the Random Dad YouTube channel. We've got a special treat for you today. If you caught the Random Dad Proves the John Deere dealership wrong, you'll know that we are out in the sugar house, aka garage, storage shed, garden shed. But we have completed the annual transformation into the sugar house, and I'm doing a test boil today. We just hung buckets yesterday. There's water in here today. I've got everything set up, and I wanted to walk you through my setup. I've had a lot of requests on the Random Dad Instagram, which if you're not following that, you should hit the link in the description and follow me over there on Instagram. I've had thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of requests on Instagram to walk you through my homemade backyard maple sugaring setup. I know you're probably doing the math right now. Random Dad Instagram only has 300 followers. I don't know how it happened either. It's a little bit of a surprise to me. So I'll walk you through what I've got going on here. Okay, welcome to the sugar house. This is a 2x2 old school finishing pan that I actually inherited from my grandfather. He used to finish maple syrup on this back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. I grew up looking at this thing and licking my lips waiting for maple syrup. This is a steam pan that I got on Amazon, and as you can see, I have that plumbed in to this float box. This is just a warming pan. I keep the sap filled here, and it warms up a little bit, probably gets me a couple of degrees before I end up down in the finishing pan. This is a float box, and so this stainless steel float down here floats on the sap level, and when it goes down, it pushes this little rubber gasket down and it lets a little bit more sap in. You can fine tune the level right here with this threaded rod, and this keeps the perfect level of sap down in my pan here. It is wood fired. As the raw sap, it's actually not raw sap, and I'll talk about that in a minute, works its way through this pan, by the time it gets over to this side, there's another float box over here, but this is the draw-off valve. I haven't calibrated this thermometer yet, but water boils at 212 degrees Fahrenheit, and at about 219, sap turns into syrup. I don't usually run enough sap through this thing to be able to actually draw off finished syrup. What we usually do is I have a homemade filter bucket over here. I have a 6-gallon plastic bucket that happens to be food safe. I've cut the lid on the top of it and placed a plastic sap bucket, cut the bottom out of, so that this cloth filter slides right through. And then what I do is I drop another 3 paper filters in this cone filter. So I draw off into this bucket, and then we finish like everybody else does in a turkey fryer. So that's how we finish. How we start is interesting. There's a lot of YouTube videos on the internet about these homemade reverse osmosis machines. It's really straightforward to build, and if you're doing any backyard sugaring, I would highly recommend this. It's like a total time saver. I've got a booster pump here. I'll put all the links in the description below, but this is an Aquatech 8800 booster pump. Raw sap comes into this side, and this creates the pressure that I need to run these RO membranes. So we'll spin this thing around. I just have a regular 5 micron house water filter here. This is gonna take all of the little pieces of dirt and other junk that ends up in your sap out of it. I come around here, and then I have a pressure gauge. My membranes, I think, work the best at about 80 psi. You need back pressure on your system in order for reverse osmosis membranes to work. And so then, I have 2 150 gallon per day reverse osmosis membranes. I send that raw sap that's been filtered through the 5 micron filter into the first RO membrane. Pure water comes out one side, and concentrated sap runs up into the next membrane. I squeeze as much water out as I can. I've got 100% pure water going out one side, and then concentrated sap coming out the other side. Typically, I'll run this thing overnight, all night long, the night before I boil. I just keep circling the concentrate back through it. And I can take, 60 gallons of sap and turn it into 30 gallons of concentrate overnight while I'm sleeping. Then I'll set up a 33 gallon barrel right here of concentrate. I'll run it back through the RO machine, and I'll string the output of the RO machine right into this top warming pan. And if I get my pressures right, I can usually keep up with the actual boiling, so I don't really have to add any. This arch I built myself in order to accommodate this finishing pan. I'll put some photographs in here about that. So I just bought 2 foot by 2 foot sheets of 6mm plate steel from my local steel supply shop. I also bought a barrel stove kit, which gave me the front door and the thimble for the stovepipe out. I rented just a simple MIG welder for the day, and I just went ahead and squared up and made a cube out of steel. I used just a jigsaw with a steel blade. I burned through a bunch of blades doing that, but welded the box together, flipped it over, and then I used some 1/2-inch pipe with caps and just welded the fittings to the bottom of it for legs. And then I just welded in some pieces of angle iron on the top to use as rails to actually support the pan. I've added this blower. There are definitely a couple of things that I would do differently if I was going to do it again. But if you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. Every year with the backyard sugaring setup, I evolve my system a little bit. Oh, there goes the door. It's a little windy outside. I built the RO a couple years ago. I added a second membrane 1 year. Last year, I added fire brick insulation to this arch. And I can tell you already by this test boil with the water, it's boiling much better. That fire brick is pushing that heat up into the pan instead of letting it radiate out in here. Another bonus of that is it's usually about 1,000 degrees in this shed, and it's not at all. It's holding a lot more heat in and pushing it into the water, which will be sat. Yeah, I mean, that's a great looking boil. And I lit the fire 20 minutes ago. So 20 minutes from stone cold to this rolling boil here is pretty awesome. I'll update you guys as sugaring season goes. I've got a couple other Random Dad videos coming out, but hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, leave me a comment,